training.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. Richard is busy flying across the country, so he'll be back in a bit. So today, instead, I have the wonderful Calvin Moseman. Calvin has been a senior engineer with us for many, many, many years, and it is always a pleasure to have him on the stream. Hello,
Good
Stu.
afternoon.
Yes, hello. Real quick, we'll talk about the schedule. We're continuing this sort of beginner series pretty much probably, I think, through October. So I'll be covering a lot of different topics. But today we're going to be doing organizing the relationship graph, which is always fun. That is always a interesting pickle. And then tomorrow will be many-to-many relationships, which is also equally interesting. And then Friday will be calculations, functions, and operators. So understanding calculations. Monday will be basically most common script uses. There's some scripts that pretty much every FileMaker database is going to have. We'll talk about that. Document management is always a topic of interest on day 12. And then, of course, for day 13, we're going to discuss navigation device screen sizes. Shockingly enough, your size of your FileMaker database in appearance should change if you have it on an iPhone or an iPad. So, with that being said, Calvin, how are we organizing the relationship graph today?
Good afternoon. I'm really excited to talk about relationships in the FileMaker relationship graph, and we're going to start. I mean, we're keeping this as a basic conversation. If you have questions or comments, please chime in through the different chat options with Discord and YouTube and Twitch. And Margaret's going to bring me those as soon as they come up. But let's just talk about some. We're going to start off with a fresh FileMaker app, and we're just going to let me go ahead and share my screen. So let's go ahead and I am in. We're in version 2023. So this is the latest one, and I'm just going to say create new, and I'm just going to do blank. We're just going to start off with a blank canvas, and I'll call this the blank canvas, and put that on my desktop. Okay, so immediately when we create a new app, it's going to create a table with the app name that we selected. For me, it was blank canvas, and it was going to put a bunch of fields in here, default fields, which actually there's a trick to change what the default fields are. Right now, I just have the defaults set. So we are given a primary key, a creation information, and modification information. But just to keep this simple, I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this. And let's start with our table. I don't want to call this blank canvas. I'm going to call this one contacts. And what's something that we want to track about our contacts? Does anyone have any opinions? What does anyone have contacts they want to track something about them? Any ideas there? We could do notes, but that might be a little too.
How about clients?
Clients, contacts and their clients?
Yeah.
So maybe like
so I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I do work for as financial advisor to cities. So
okay.
What I have in mind is I have contacts and then I have cities, because some of the contacts, like finance directors, change all the time. So I can really change them, and then they'll change to the new city that they're working in.
Got it. So how about we do like company? So that would be like the
companies
where they're working, and then contacts. Contacts is going to be the people within the company, and so we'll have one company with many contacts. Yeah, we're going to keep it simple and just stick with these two for now. Okay. And so let's go ahead and see what create some fields in here. So I'm going to give it a name field. We've got company, and I'm going to give it an ID company field. And now this field is going to be our primary key for the table. So sometimes we designate this with a P, so you can easily identify which one's the primary key. There's other ways to identify it. In this case, we'll just give it that designation. And then for the auto enter information, let's give it a serial number. And I'm going to prefix the serial number with COM. Now, this could be a number, but we could leave it as a number field and have it an incrementing number. But in this case, I want to prefix my number. So if I see this data exported in a spreadsheet, I can just look at the ID and tell what kind of record it is. So COM, short for company. And I'll increment by 1. So the first company is going to be COM1, the second will be COM2, etc. And it's an auto enter serial. So that's a pretty simple table. All we have is a name and a primary key. Now let's go to contacts. We're going to do a contact field. And let's do ID contact. And we're going to give this one a P for primary key as well. We'll say create. And we'll do the same thing here for CON for contact. And this we're going to do the same increment by 1 here as well. And so there we go. Now let's go ahead and save this. And we're going to save everything. Okay. So we created 2 tables. Each table just has 2 fields, a primary key and a name field. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up another window here. I'll say new window. And you'll notice that this opened to the same layout that I had. And you'll notice here also for each table that we created, it automatically created a layout for that table. And these are really basic layouts. Now the one that I was on, it automatically created a record. I didn't select new record, it was just there. And here I'm going to say new record. So now we've got a contact one and a company one. And I'm going to call this one company the ABC company. And this contact is going to be John Doe. Now we have now we've got this company record here on the left and a contact record here on the right. And we got primary keys for each of them, but they're not connected at all. Let's look at this, how this looks in the relationship database, or in define and manage database relationships. There's no connection between these 2 records or these 2 tables, and so it's not relational yet. We can have as many records over here as we want. I'm going to change this to a list. Let's just say edit layout, and I'm going to make this a little shorter. Oops. So we can see multiple people on here. Browse. Let's create a few more records. So we've got, and let's go ahead and we'll use the alternate row state so we can see differentiate the different records. So contact 2 will be Johnny Appleseed. We need someone that's not a John. We can do a Richard. Okay. So here we've got 3 different contacts, and we see their different numbers. We've got CON1, CON2, CON3, these different primary keys, but there's no connection between these. So to build that connection, we have to have a 3rd field over here, which would be an ID company. This ID company we're creating in the contacts table, and I'm going to give it an F at the end to designate it as a foreign key. Now, sometimes we get confused because this is an ID. We might want to set it up to auto enter it, but in this case, because it's foreign. We want to keep it as not auto entered. It will be entered by when the record's created to designate where that record belongs. Let me go ahead and say OK, and we'll jump back in there. Sorry. So now that we've got these 2 tables and this relationship, these 2 fields, we can set up the relationship. So the ID company primary goes to the ID company foreign in contacts. And you'll notice FileMaker is really smart here. You'll see that there's this almost like a crow's feet on the right side. and it's straight on the left side, which tells us that this is a one-to-many relationship. And FileMaker can tell that because the primary key on the left is an auto enter serial, while the one on the right has no auto enter information. So now these two are connected. So go ahead. But how do we get this information to show up from one side to the other? Let's go ahead and just bring in an additional field. And so here's my selector or option for specifying the field. And I can see my related tables. Now, if I jump into Manage Database and delete this, say OK, now I have no related tables. So it's important to have that relationship set up before you go here and try to put fields down that are related to another record. Now, if I'll jump back into Manage Database and set that up again real quick. And we're just going to say we want the contacts for this company. And I'm just going to say contact name. So there we go. So it's on here, but I can't type any information in there. I'll tab in. It doesn't tab to the next field. Let's try something out. I'm going to go over here, make this just slightly bigger, and put our foreign key on there. And while I'm in this area, I'm going to disable that. OK, so now we see we have 3 records, and there's no foreign key information in here. So let me grab this foreign key over here. And I'm going to paste it in here and hit Command equals to do a replace field contents. And that will just put this COM1 into all of these records. So now all of these contacts, all 3 of them, are associated with the ABC company. And we can see John Doe is right here. So why did it select John Doe and not Johnny Appleseed or Richard? The reason is that when we look through a relationship, it's going to show us the first record through that relationship. So when you're trying to figure out why something's showing up through a relationship, that's why, whatever the first record is through that relationship. Now, there's ways of changing that. So if we look at this, we can say sort records. And just to make this show some different information, I'm going to say sort contact by sort the contact table by contact in descending order. I'll say OK. Does anyone have a guess how this is going to change it? If you have any guesses, what name's going to be at the top? I'll put you. Let's just see over here what the names were. Who's going to be at the top? We have no guesses.
Richard will be first.
Richard will be first. Yep. So Richard's now at the top because he sorted alphabetically. It's in descending order. Richard would be at the top. Now, if there's no sort specified, then it's just going to show you the first created record, whether there's a creation timestamp or not. It's just whichever record is created first, that one's listed top. And if we have multiple, if you do use the sorting on the relationship, that slows down performance a little bit. Sometimes that's required, but just so you know. So I removed that, but how can we see multiple records? Now, it doesn't really help us to see just the one contact. We want to see multiple. And the way we do that is with a portal. So I just grabbed the portal tool in the toolbar. Now I've got options to select different places, the different table occurrences in the relationship graph. I only have 2, so I'm going to select contacts. And you can also select sorting here. I'll say OK. And I really only want the contact. Say OK again. So now we have contact here and we have contact below it. And in this case, we see all 3 contacts in this portal. And this can extend to additional ones as well. Now, one thing to note here, I did mention you can allow sorting on the portal itself. If you sort on the portal, I'm going to do the same thing here that I did previously. it will sort the portal, but it doesn't sort the relationship. But if I remove sorting from the portal, I'm just going to jump over here and say manage database and re-enable the sorting. And it's saved my last settings. I'll go back to browse mode. The sorting through the relationship will update the portal, and it will update the records you see through there. Now, if you do specify additional sorting here, so let's say ascending order, it will default to what you specified for that specific portal. So you can sort the portals through the relationship or on the portal itself. Either way, it does take a performance hit on the app. So
Real
let's
quick,
go ahead.
we have some questions.
Good.
Why can't you connect two primary keys together?
Oh, good question. So the answer is you can, but let's see what happens. Is it going to work? Let me remove the sorting real quick, and then we'll try connecting for primary keys. So the question is, why can't we connect two primary keys? So let's just go ahead and remove this relationship. And instead of foreign keys, I'll do primary keys. And so here, FileMaker is a little confused. It's saying that this doesn't really make sense as a one-to-one relationship. So we don't have those crow's feet anywhere. And it broke the so there's no related records here, which is interesting. So why is there no related records? Our primary key here, if I go over here and do a search, and the primary key over here, there's no records that match. I'll say cancel. Let me create a new record. And I am just going to pay now in the way that we have this set up to have the prefix COM for company and CON for contact, then there's never going to be an alignment between the two. And if there happened to be, if say we took out the prefix and just had serial numbers that were real numbers, if there ever was a match between the primary keys on both tables, there's no valid reason we would have those two things should match up. The primary key is what we call a unique identifier. And so the primary key should be unique to that one record in that one table. And we've actually, in FileMaker, we've moved away from using serial numbers and are now using more often universal unique identifiers, or UUIDs. And that's a string of numbers, but for the sake of simplicity, we're using serial numbers in this demo. So if you match two primary keys, it's like saying, my name is Calvin and I work at the Calvin Company. Well, it's going to be confusing, and having two things with the same primary key, it doesn't really make sense. So you can set up the relationship, but it's not going to be a valid one for your data. FileMaker can handle it, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Does that answer the question?
I think that does. I'll let you know if there's a follow-up. And then real quick, we haven't explained portals. So I would say the basic definition of a portal for anyone who's new is that it's a layout object that allows you to see related records. Yeah,
that's a great way of putting it. It's a layout object. I like to think of it as like a window. You're looking from one table across to another table. So if we look at the relationship graph, we're in companies and we're looking through this portal or this window into the contacts, and through that window we only see what's related. The next thing I want to look at is some of these options here. So allow creation of records in this table via this relationship. So we've got these options on both sides. Usually we're only concerned with them on the child side of the relationship. So you can think of the parent as being company. In a one-to-many relationship, we have parent on the left, child on the right. And so here I'm going to say allow creation of records in this table via this relationship. What's that going to do? That is going to allow me to create, just by typing in the field, it will create new records. So let's do another company, and we're going to call this one the hair company. And we'll see we have a new unique primary key, COM2. I'm going to call this hair company. And now you'll notice when I showed you this before, I wasn't able to type into this field, but I'm able to type in it now. And let's do let's put somebody in here, put Sally. Now I started typing in the contact field, and you'll notice we've got 4 records, John, Richard, and a blank record. And the blank record has no foreign key, and everything else is related to the company one. Now, so it hasn't created the Sally record. If I click out of here and click to the side, nothing was done. But if I type that in again, as soon as I save or commit the record, then that record's created. So you'll see when I tabbed out to the next field, we went from 4 records to 5 records. If I scroll down here, we see Sally. There's a primary key because each person gets a primary key. And automatically we have the company 2 foreign key filled out, which this technique, create record via relationship, is a great way to create related records quickly and easy way to set it up. Now you'll notice I was able to do that without a portal, but if this portal wasn't there, I wouldn't be able to create a second record. And so now we have what the create record via relationship does is it allows us to continually add more records. So we can say, let's put in some more records, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and it keeps giving me more and more records. Now I ran out of space, and how can we solve that? What we need to do is add a scroll bar. So I'll say allow vertical scrolling in the portal. And so now I can scroll down and continue to add more records. And you'll notice as I created each of those records, this list of contacts became longer and longer and longer. And we'll see all of these records here. So that was allow creation of records via this relationship. We already talked about sort records. And now this other one is pretty dangerous. So we don't want to use it all the time. Use with care. So delete records in this table when a record is deleted in the other table. I don't use this one very often just because it scares me a little bit to create or to automatically delete related records. If we deleted a company in this scenario, we probably wouldn't want to delete a company. And if we did, we probably wouldn't want to lose all the contact information for the people that work for that company. But let's see what happens with that enabled, and I select delete. Let me select delete record. And it's going to give me a warning. Are you sure you want to delete this record? I'm going to say delete. And you'll notice over here, it jumped down to 4 records. All those records were deleted that had the matching ID, and we're left with only 1 record in the company area. So really powerful way of deleting records, and it actually works a lot faster. You can use the delete record via relationship in some really neat ways for deleting a lot of records when you want to, by creating a special relationship just for deleting records. It's a good way to delete lots of records. It's faster than saying delete all.
Though a quick reminder to people, if you delete a record, there is no way to get the record back outside of getting a backup.
Pulling a backup.
Yeah.
And this isn't on FileMaker server, so there's no backups. Any questions there? We're ready to continue.
There's a question. When you use the create records automatically, do you give the TO a specific name so you know something special is going on with the relationship?
Good question. Yeah. So what I like to do, and let me just see real quick if this is done in, so we have our app that we really like to use for a lot of demos called FM Starting Point. And let me bring that over here. And so this one is a really great illustration of how to set up relationships. And so we've got the, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Let me just go to zip back here. And I don't know that we actually use that technique very much in FM Starting Point. I'm just trying to glance through some of these and see if we have any. So the way that I would set it up, if I were doing this, is, or the way that I sometimes I designate something as creating via relationship. So this is a great illustration here. We've got contacts. Actually, we've got accounts here, and we've got contacts. So we're kind of getting ahead, but we'll come back here. So we've got this table group called accounts and the related contacts. So this is kind of the same scenario that we're talking about, companies and contacts. And this one does not have allow record creation of records via this relationship enabled, but I'm going to enable it. And to designate that that was enabled, sometimes what I'll do is I will just put in here create, and that way it stands out to me when I'm looking through those table occurrences and I see, okay, this one does create records via the relationship. Sometimes you want that enabled, sometimes you don't. I'm going to leave that one as is because this is just a test demo copy of that app. Great question though. We're going to talk more about how to name and organize these in a moment. So we kind of
just one question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If say Sally ends up going to work for ABC, all you have to do is go over to her foreign number and just change that. Is that all you have to do?
Yeah, so good question. So we will want to think about how you, in your business process, you'll want to think about, it's one of those situations where there's multiple ways to do something. So let's say this is the jackfruit company, and here Jack works here. So I automatically created this person, and now say this company goes under, and we need to, and Jack decides he's going to go work for ABC company. Now sometimes, and I've worked for clients that have their apps do both things. We'll just say this record's inactive, but we need to leave Jack over here and we just remember that he used to work for that company and all of his old projects are still associated with him at that old company. And we can maybe duplicate his record and bring all of his data over here and just create a new Jack record. And so now it seems like he has two records in here, but we put a status and say this one's inactive. Don't reference it in the future, but for archival reasons and for reviewing the legacy data, we need to keep it there. The other option, so I'm going to delete the new record. The other option, if you want to move someone from one table to another, or one associate relationship to another, is that you would just change the foreign key. And so here, I'll just, we have a COM3, and now I just switched it to COM1. As soon as I commit the record, you'll see his name show up here. And where did my thing go? In FM Starting Point, we'll see over here, here where we have company and the company name, this is managing that relationship for us. So we can remove him from one company and assign him to a new company. We'll just create a new one and say new company. And you'll see that that he's assigned here. Jump over. Let's do that again. There we go. So in this case, you could either duplicate the record and assign it to the new one, or you could move it by changing those IDs. And what FM starting point does here is it's essentially changing that ID in the background. You don't see it, but it's giving you an interface to work with to do that more easily. Great question. Any other follow-up questions on those?
We do have a different question from Maui Lonnie on Twitch. Can you create tables and relationships in scripts, or is it just through the shown dialogues?
That's a good question. So you can't create tables with a script. A script is more interacting with the data itself, but you can't create a table using that. I've seen some apps that actually can use a script to generate a piece of XML that you can copy and paste into the database to create a table or create not relationships. And that but that's not really, that's pretty high level stuff. I haven't actually done that myself. But no, the scripts don't do that. The scripts do some interesting things as far as I think we can open the script workspace, which is interesting. And you can also open manage database. And so so you can have a script that opens the managed database area like this, but it won't actually create anything in there. I don't actually use these open script workspace or managed data sources very often. Usually I use keyboard shortcuts to open that. Good question, though. Any other thoughts or questions there?
Well, David mentions, I think it is important to mention that when you create new records relationships, all child keys will copy the information from parent keys.
Yeah. So good point there. So if we create a record via the relationship, as shown here, what it's going to do is create that record where this relationship is valid. And so only records with a matching foreign key to this primary key will be valid in that relationship. So it automatically enters that data for you. And you can have more than one field in a relationship. So, so you can have multiple items entered. So good point there. Let's go ahead and just look at that real quick. So here I'm saying, I'm just going to put another John in here. Now, I didn't run any scripts to set those fields. I didn't do anything to set this field. It just automatically populated because the relationship required it to be so. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. You could do a script that saved the primary key in a variable, went to this record, created a new record, or went to this table, the contacts table, created a new contact record, set the foreign key with the variable that you had saved, and then navigate back to your company layout, and you can manage that all in a script. In fact, I think FM Starting Point does most of their managing creating related records that way. So if we go over here, we'll see create record via relationship isn't enabled, or else we'd see something. When we say new contact, it saves this, it saves the company ID and relates that contact by the company ID. Might be better if we looked over here. So here, create record via relationship is enabled, so we see that. But if we said new contact, it would use a script to accomplish the same thing. The script will run slightly slower than just creating it via the relationship as far as performance is concerned. So let's go ahead and take a look at the relationship graph. So as you're working on something like this, is pretty much what something might look like when somebody's working on this or in beginning. And maybe they create a new record or a new table occurrence, and maybe they use something like this and say, okay, contacts to company, and then they put something like that on there and say add and say okay, and oh, this doesn't work, so I'm going to call this one company 2. Okay, and then create new one here. Okay, I'm going to start with company. And for whatever reason, this starts to kind of grow like this, and it can work. You can get these relationships to work, and I'm just relating things at random. What you end up doing is if you keep having this, if you don't have a plan, and your app just kind of starts growing organically like this, you're going to run into something that might look like this. And this is just really hard to work with. Has anyone ever seen something like this? A relationship graph? This is actually not even the worst relationship graph I've seen. But you can just create more and more relationships just focused on the feature and not on being organized. And if your relationship graph gets looking like this, then it begins to become really hard to work with. And to clean it up is going to start breaking different features. There's another one down here. This one, someone's trying to clean up a little bit. You can see that there's a little, there's some organization going on. Now, the problem with something like this is that everything connected here is considered in the same table group. Now, you'll notice that company 4 is related to contacts 4, is related to contacts 3, is related to contacts 2, is related to company, is related to contacts. That's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 relationships that you'd have to look through to get information from one to the other. And when when you bring up this window, this layout, it's going to load that entire table group. And that takes, the bigger the table group, the longer it's going to take to do that. And so I've seen some apps that had maybe there was a relationship where there's the distance of 10 relationships between 2 different table occurrences. That's not one table occurrence, 10 relationships away from another isn't really relevant. They're not really relevant to each other, so they need to be separated and organized. Now, in this case, let's just point out each of these is a table occurrence that you see on the relationship graph. And that's like a copy of the table that we can reference. And all the data is going to be identical in each one of these table occurrences. And when all of these, in a group of relationships that are a group of table occurrences is called a table group. And the best way to organize this is what we call anchor buoy. So I didn't really start out this demo with anchor buoy, so let's clean it up. I'm going to delete all of these and we'll remove it. And let's go ahead. I'm going to just delete this one and we'll see what happens. So if we delete this, will it delete the table? That might be a question. If we remove the table occurrence, the last table occurrence for a table, does it remove the table? We should have some kind of voting app so people can chime in on that. I'm going to remove it. So the answer is no, the table's still there. It doesn't require a table occurrence. It actually shows that there's no table occurrence. So what's going to happen when I say OK? When I said OK, it's going to say table missing. It doesn't know where this belongs. And if I go into layout mode, it says there's no table here, and table's missing for each of these. That you don't want to do that accidentally to your app. So let's go ahead and create that again. Say contacts. But this time, I'm going to say we want to set up a separate table groups for these. So here I'm going to say TO1 and call this one company. Sometimes I like to do my main table occurrence in all caps so it stands out. And I'm going to call this one TO2 contacts. Do that one, and you'll notice so that updated those names. And I'm going to say OK. This is still broken. It still doesn't know where this is supposed to be associated. I'm going to select contacts 2, say OK. And this is still broken because it doesn't know where that's supposed to be, but I'm just going to fix it real fast. There we go. It's fixed, and you'll see all my record data is still there. So it didn't delete the table, it didn't delete the records. It just couldn't display anything because the table occurrence was gone. Every layout is associated with a table occurrence. It has to be, or it won't work. The context, what we like to say is context is king. The context is where the table occurrence, which table occurrence the layout is associated with. Now this is still broken over here. Let's fix this. So I'm going to go over here and use a naming convention that will be good for this. So because now it is a contacts table occurrence, but I want it in the table, a group for company. So I'll give it a number, the same number as the company table group, and I'll put A there to designate as the first related table occurrence. And what I like to do here is to put the name company in lowercase letters. That just tells me this is part of the table group company, and this is the main parent, and the sub table occurrence is contacts. That's why it's in all caps. And then I'll put in ID company so I can recognize right away which how that's related. I'll say okay, and let's go ahead and set up that relationship. So now those two are connected. I'll say okay, and I don't really want that field there anymore. I'm just going to select this one. So I selected the related table occurrence, and it showed up under my related tables. This is really nice how that was. If once you have a lot of table occurrences, then this naming convention, you see why it's so important to be organized with these table occurrences. I'll go ahead and say okay. And now when I go back to browse mode, we'll see something's not working right. So that is a problem. Let's go ahead and figure this out. Okay, so I deleted that table occurrence, if we remember, before that company table occurrence. So that meant the table occurrence was deleted from the portal. The portal didn't get deleted, but the table occurrence, it's no longer associated with the table occurrence. And this might be something good to point out. If it's not associated with a table occurrence, even if that field might have related data, so let's go ahead and bring a copy up here. Go to browse mode. You'll see if it's not in the portal, it shows data. Let's go ahead. But if it's in the portal and the portal's broken, it won't show anything. Let's go ahead and fix this. Say okay. Go back to browse mode. Now we see our data once again with that through that table occurrence. So this naming convention here, where we are grouping things by number, the table group, and then giving it this longer name that kind of shows the position in the relationship graph, is called anchor buoy. So you can kind of think about this. The parent table occurrence is the name of the table group. It is the anchor for everything else. We will use this parent table occurrence for our layouts. We'll use it for most of our scripting. We want to think of things in the context of that table occurrence, and the main one. And then we can refer to things in these child tables. But if I run a script that processes contacts, or I create a layout referring to contacts, I don't really want to deal with it in this child table. I'll want to deal with it over here in the main contacts table occurrence. You go ahead and say okay. Let's go ahead and do you have any questions about the anchor buoy? We're going to keep talking about that.
Not about anchor buoy, but someone asked about if you could, since you have the table occurrence as contacts, could you also select the unrelated contacts and get the same information? Or because in the field it dropped up, it said the related tables, and there was contacts, which is the table occurrence attached to that. There's also the unrelated table of contacts below that. What happens if you picked
Yeah, so what happens if you select the unrelated ones? So it depends on what you're doing it for. So let's go ahead and just move this one back up here. I'll say create label. So if we do it in a field, I'll say contact. So I'm grabbing it from another table. It let me do it. But let's see what it says. It says unrelated table. So it's broken, but it let me do it. If I go here, it's grayed out. So if I try to associate a portal with an unrelated table, it's not going to work. But if I do it for a field, it will allow me to do it, but it won't work, obviously. But good question there. So sometimes it's grayed out, and sometimes it will let you, and but it won't work right away. Now, why might it let you do that? So one thing that we do quite a bit is we'll copy something from one layout that works really nice and paste it into another. So for example, like here, the notes. I'm going to create a note. So this notes area looks almost identical to this notes area in contacts. The accounts and contacts notes area are pretty identical, pretty close. So just the height of some of the fields in Portal is not quite the same. So this was copied from one table. I don't know which one was built first, but it was copied from one and pasted into the other. And then someone updated all those fields to link correctly. And so what worked in one layout, in the accounts area, you could copy and paste into the contacts, but it wouldn't work right away. You'd have to go in there and update each of those items. So this, you could copy and paste it in there. It won't work, but you can update it to fix it, to make it work. Another way you can fix this, and this is, depending on what you're doing, this wouldn't make sense in connecting two parent table groups, but if I update the relationship, now when I go into browse mode, it's working. So sometimes you can set a field on there that doesn't work right away, but you can go back and fix the relationship graph to make it work. In this case, you wouldn't want two parent table occurrences referencing each other, though. Any other questions?
Yes. Should the togs be sorted in a particular order?
Yeah, good question. So TOGS, as Margaret said, is an acronym for table occurrence group, so TOG. And so should they be sorted in a specific order? And you'll note it depends on, usually you probably want the tables that you're going to work with the most at the top, but it really depends on what you want. So if you look at from starting point, we'll see the first table group is accounts, second is calendar, third is calendar activities, fourth is communication and notes, fifth is contacts. Now, if I were rebuilding this, which we're not going to do, I probably want accounts and contacts next to each other. Then you see over here, invoices and invoice line items are groups 12 and 13. So those are right next to each other, which is helpful. So you probably want the ones you're going to work with most at the top, and the parent and child tables next to each other, like the invoice and invoice line items, that's really helpful to have right next to each other. But that's really comes down to the developer's preference and how they want to organize that. Good question.
I think
Any
FMSP is sorted alphabetically. So.
Oh, is that what it is?
It took me a second reading them. Like, is that alphabetical? I think it's alphabetical.
It only is up to a point, I'm sure.
See,
so
then we go to
timesheets and tasks. That's not alphabetical.
Nope. So
and
we
then
go
miscellaneous. It goes all over the place.
We got it partway through, and then promptly.
Well, yeah. and I actually was on the team that built the original one, and I don't know that timesheets was part of that.
Oh yeah.
So the original FM starting point was built in 2010. I feel old just saying that. And so it's grown since then. It's pretty cool. Any other questions about table occurrences or the relationship graph?
Nope. Could show the foreign key in the portal.
Yes, you can. So so I'm just showing you a basic field to show that it works. So cool thing here, if you hold down the Option key, or I think it's Control on Windows, and click and drag some layout object, it will duplicate it. And you can see that that's happening by the plus button, the green plus button appearing. Now I will put in the primary key in here so you can just see that it works. There we go. And now you could also put in the foreign key, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense because it's going to be identical for everyone in this relationship. So if I go to foreign key, you'll see they're all the same. So yeah, you can put any data in there. I was just putting the names for the illustration. Now, one thing to show you, just to kind of go back to why these are helpful. Now, if we look here, you'll see that we say related table, or the current table, that's the table for the layout, is contacts. And now you can see all the related tables, and they're all nicely organized in order here. We've got A, B, C, D, skipped E. And now I can see here, this one, H1, this is a child table, contact, and this one, H1, is a grandchild. So just by looking at this, I can tell where it is on the relationship graph. Now that's pretty helpful. And all these unrelated items I can just ignore. But when I come over to the scripting, there's a lot of scripting up here. And I'm just going to select here this one. Here it's saying set field. Now, whenever you're doing a set field or something like that, because it knows the context of the layout that you're looking at, and so it will base it the first option you get. So let me show you this. We are currently in contacts. So if I type in a new set field and select, specify, by default, it goes to contacts because that's the layout that I'm currently in. But I can scroll up and down to anywhere on the relationship graph. And having this organized in this anchor buoy method really makes it fast and easy to jump around and see where I need to go, and select the right table occurrence that I need for my scripting. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So that's another reason why it helps with the layout setup, but it especially helps with scripting, keeping that organized and understanding what fields we want to grab. So any other questions there about the anchor and buoy?
Is anchor buoy the only way to organize a relationship graph?
No, but it's the best way. So let's go ahead so we showed you, and when I say best, I mean it is the most, it has the best performance. So if you do something like this, where you can see you got 1, 2, 3, you can do 3 jumps to somewhere. Here's a farther one. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps between related items. There's this, you're going to load a lot more data, and this is not a good practice. Here's an even worse spider web, and a worse spider web. So anchor buoy, you'll see instead of loading a whole bunch of table occurrences, we're just loading a small table group each time. So that's a lot more efficient. And here's an example from Claris of using anchor buoy. If you think about this, the anchor is what's holding everything down, and the buoys are all the child tables. So we got the parent as the anchor, the children as the buoys. And we can have also grandchildren. It's usually not good to go beyond grandchildren in a table group. So there's a couple other methods that people will use sometimes, like selector connector, but those have kind of gone along the wayside. They are not very good for large apps. for apps that you want to run quickly. So Anchor Buoy is the best as far as performance goes. So here we're just seeing this is the table group, table occurrence group. Here's our anchors, here's our buoys, and we want to use our anchors for those layouts, and the buoys we can reference in scripts, but we don't want to reference layouts. And that's one thing that really, when we start taking something like a spider web like this and trying to clean it up, you will find that there's some child table occurrence that's really critical for a parent, but then it has its own layouts based on it, and fixing anything is going to start breaking things. And so usually when I clean these things up, it takes a long time. And I just do a little bit at a time, because it's every time I fix something to make it run faster, it's breaking other things that I have to go back and fix. So it's definitely a lot faster to just do it right the first time.
Speaking of which, we have a question related to that.
Yeah.
Now that I am beginning, how do I avoid chaotic relationships? So.
Hey, okay, good question. So what you want to do is just, so maybe you started out the way that I started this demo and have relationships all over the place, and we want to go to something that looks more like this. Each table, so here I only have 2 tables. Each table needs its own table group. So TO1 is company, TO2 is contacts, TO3 something else, TO4. Each of those tables needs its own table occurrence, or needs its own table group. And then every layout that you create that needs to be based on a parent table occurrence. So we don't want a layout based on TO1A. We want that based on the TO2 contacts. And so we just need to make sure that we associate those layouts to the right table occurrence. Then we need to, if you've already made some mistakes there, you can just slowly go back and adjust those and move them to the right table occurrences.
Should you have a dedicated TO per layout? ?
That's a good question. So some people will do that. No. So if we go to FM starting point, which is a great illustration of this, we will see that, let's go to manage layouts. When you look at the layouts, you will see which table occurrence each layout is related to. So all of these are related to preferences, the same table occurrence, because it's all the same data. You don't need a new table group for each layout. And that would be a lot of extra work. So all of these accounts layouts are related to TO1 accounts. All the assets related to the assets. All the contacts related to the main contacts table occurrence. So good question. Yeah, you don't want a separate one for each layout. And I have had run into instances where people were doing that. But yeah, don't do that. That's a lot of extra work. So what we looked at today was relationships, the primary and foreign keys, how those are related, what the different options are there, and then organizing those relationships. You want to use the anchor buoy method from the beginning, just because it keeps as your app grows and as you continue to work on it, it will make your development so much faster to have clean code that you can easily read and someone coming in behind you, because often these apps you pass apps on to the next person, to another developer who's going to come in your footsteps, and you want to have those organized so that they can easily figure out what you were thinking when you built these awesome features.
Someone asked, what is Anchor Buoy? I think they came in a little late.
Yeah, so Anchor Buoy is a way to set up the relationships. We've got the anchor here, which is the parent table. We've got the buoy here, which is the child. And so you want to base your layouts on the anchor or parent table. And then you can refer to the children, but the layouts are based on the main parent table. That's kind of a real fast explanation there.
Yes, that is the speed run explanation. This video will be up shortly. Also, Power Eagle, you will find if you Google Anchor Buoy on our YouTube channel, there will be a ton of videos on it. We cover this topic a lot. We cover it a lot because relationships, I think, I would argue, one of the hardest things to understand about FileMaker, and they get more and more complicated if you don't organize them correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Calvin.
It's definitely true. So the relationships is one of the first big hurdles of trying to understand in FileMaker. But once you get that down and have it organized, it really helps your development.
So thank you everyone for coming. We greatly appreciate having you here. Thank you everyone for the awesome questions on Zoom, YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. It's much appreciated, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!